There's a big, beautiful world out there somewhere waiting to be discovered. Unfortunately, a good deal of us have found ourselves in our homes for an extended period of time over the last year, so it's not ideal, but hey, guess what? There are also many big, beautiful, terrifying worlds to discover and explore through media consumption. Sure, we were born too late to explore the unknown world around us and too early to be considered for space exploration, but at least we were right on time for the golden era of television. So let's count down the top 5 horror shows that deserve your attention, part 2. Coming in at number 5, we've got The Terror. There's only 2 seasons as of right now, but they are worth it. Historical dramas taking a deep look at life in some very unpleasant situations, all while introducing some truly terrifying monsters. That's The Terror for ya. The first season, based on Dan Simmons' 2007 novel of the same title, takes a look at a team of Arctic explorers who get stuck in the ice and have to survive the winter. Sure, on the surface it sounds like a documentary you'd watch in high school history class, full of slow zooms and pans on oil paintings of the expeditions. However, there's a whole lot more going on here. Stalking the frozen tundra, there's an unspeakable beast known as the Toonbach. Part polar bear, part something else entirely, it has been kept under control for ages. That is, until the explorers showed up and started messing around. Isn't it wild how quickly things can go wrong when colonizers show up? Cannibalism, ice-cold disasters, and a lot of wicked monster moments stud this fascinating tale of horror. And every time you think you know where it's going, well, you don't know where it's going. The first season of Horror is incredibly well paced and tense. Every episode offers up a brand new way to scare the daylights out of you and throw more wrenches into well laid plans than you could imagine. Then there's a second season. Taking the anthology approach, the second season is a brand new story. Historical in nature still, season 2 takes a look inside the lives of Japanese Americans forced into internment camps during the Second World War. The terrors of being taken out of your home are first and foremost, and then there's a new type of fear introduced. Instead of the Toonbach, this time we've got the Bakemono, a horrid, ghastly apparition that seems to follow a particular family wherever they go. When it comes to horror TV with a special something to set it apart, The Terror fits that description to a T. There's great monsters, awesome tension, quality pacing, and a bunch of really scary moments. But there's also the period piece aspect, which is done quite well. We can't say for sure that the realism is spot on because of the literal monsters rolling around, but the worlds that they build within the realm of this series are incredible. Give it a watch if any of that appeals to you. Coming in at number 4, we've got The Exorcist. There are plenty of different Exorcist adaptations out there for sure. You've got the OG movie, which sent the Western world into a bit of a froth when it released, convincing many that it was cursed. Once you create something like that, there's no going back. You've got to do an homage to it every once in a while because people will want to see it. So of course, there are sequels. Questionable sequels too, and a few reboots, remakes, and reimaginings along the way. But this late 2010s visit to the world of The Exorcist decides to ignore everything other than the Friedkin original. Kinda like how the latest Halloween did it, right down to the titling. The sequels to Halloween and The Exorcist. Halloween and The Exorcist. Not the most creative approach to naming something, but people will recognize it right off the bat. Thankfully, this series has more in common with the first Exorcist than just the name. It's a direct continuation of the story introduced back in 1973. The story follows 2 exorcists as they attempt to put an end to various demonic possessions. Oftentimes, one would assume that a major network series wouldn't be all that great. It's difficult to get away with any significant amount of disturbing things when you're broadcasting it far and wide. Thankfully, this series manages to dodge the woefully average network curse and goes on to make a very compelling horror story. Instead of focusing on one possession in one location, the story moves across a town, revealing dark secrets and all sorts of spooky happenings. Seemingly benign details from early in the series will pop up later with added meaning and creepiness. Now, the one thing about this show is that the first season is definitely the strongest, with the second being a little bit underwhelming when compared to it. And ultimately, this did mean that a third season was not in the works. Gone too soon. Although a solid season is more than a lot of folks can muster, so enjoy it for what it is. Coming in at number 3, we've got Freddy's Nightmares. Now here's an oddball pick for you. Horror anthologies are often pretty well received as they give all sorts of folks plenty of opportunities to try out different things. Even if one episode bombs, the next one could very well be an all-timer. So when an anthology series hosted by the one and only Freddy Krueger showed up on the scene, horror fans were enamored. He's still a legendary horror icon today, but I don't think it can be overstated how important Freddy was to the pop culture panopticon back in the 80s and 90s. He wasn't just a spooky dude that sold movies and Halloween costumes, costumes, he was making it onto big-time talk shows and music videos and was prominently featured all over the place. To have an anthology where the Crypt Keeper was actually Freddy, that's a slam dunk. In Freddy's nightmares, folks get plunked down in Springwood, Ohio, usually somewhat close to Elm Street itself, where all sorts of ominous and upsetting things are constantly happening. Folks die, and they die often, usually thanks to some sort of supernatural force or violent psychopath. Freddy himself isn't often directly involved, but he's got a lot to say about each tale, and it's often hinted at that he's the driving force behind all the evil around. Folks meet axe murderers, serial killer stands, powerful psychics, and of course, dream-invading sadists with messed up faces. There's even an episode that takes a swing at Freddy's origin story, starring Robert Englund and directed by Tobe Hooper. So if you're an Elm Street fan, or a classic slasher head, or even a Twilight Zone enthusiast, this could be right up your alley. Coming in at number 2, we've got The Strain. Vampire apocalypse, anyone? You know that sounds wicked, there's no denying it. Plus, the book it's based on was written through the collaborative efforts of Guillermo del Toro and Chuck Hogan. What could be better? It might even be scarier than ever these days because the vampire outbreak is viral in nature and the CDC shows up to try and stop it. So the world goes pretty wonky pretty quickly, but hey, like I said before, vampire apocalypse. Clocking in at 4 seasons with a grand total of 44 episodes, this is a horror TV show that completes its story. Imagine that, right? It might not be the perfect tale, but it is damn good and has an ending that more or less wraps everything up. Rare and surprising when it comes to a lot of TV shows. But yeah, if you're looking for a very dramatic horror show with some awesome villains and a very surly protagonist, The Strain is the one for you. And finally, at number 1, we've got Masters of Horror. Now, if we're gonna bring up anthologies, there's no way we're avoiding this one for 2 whole lists. No way. Masters of Horror, it doesn't get much better than this. Like, take in the laundry list of legendary directors who worked on this show. John Carpenter, Larry Cohen, Don Coscarelli, Joe Dante, Guillermo del Toro, Stuart Gordon, Tobe Hooper, John Landis, Bill Malone, Dario Argento, Takashi Miike, and Mick Garris, the man who pulled it all together. You could hypothetically pull any episode out of a hat and have a quality mini horror movie directed by an all-time great. What other show can claim that? Maybe start with Carpenter's cigarette burns, or maybe Miike's imprint for some fascinating and surprisingly deep horror television. It's all wicked stuff, really, and fans of the genre will love seeing their favorite directors tackle something a little less lengthy than a feature. How's that for attention grabbing? I know a lot of TV can start strong and then fizzle, especially when it draws a story on longer than anticipated. But when you've got some wicked horror stories to tell and a bunch of top-notch creatives at the helm, you can find some awesome tales of terror. So, what'd you think of the list? Do you agree with my picks? What horror TV shows deserve more love? Make sure you let me know down in the comments. Speaking of comments, let's take a look at some of your more gracious ones from episode 1. Robert Wood says American Horror Story is the best horror anthology series. Each season is a brand new story with a theme with brand new characters, and the same actors get to play different characters. All of the seasons are in the same universe. Oh, you know what? Absolutely. I just think that AHS already has a lot of people's attention, you know? Kind of goes like against the theme of this list. Brandon Baller says, I thought Channel Zero was no bueno. Was really disappointed by that series, watched 3 out of 4 seasons and didn't like any of them. Hey, Brandon, you feeling okay? Have you been taking your vitamins? Getting enough sleep? John Allen says, one series I haven't heard anyone talk about is the Frankenstein Chronicles on Netflix. In my opinion, it is some of Sean Bean's best work. Just started watching Kingdom, also on Netflix. Really puts a different spin on the zombie genre. To be honest, I only picked this comment so I could say Sean Bean or Sean Bond. Sean Bean, it's not the way you say it. Jamie Conkle says Pretzel Jack was amazing. You start out being absolutely terrified of him, but in the end, all you want to do is give him a hug. It's a beautiful thing when a show can give you that range of emotion, eh? And that's all the time we have for today. I'm gonna go swimming in a pool of liquid mercury. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Part polar bear, woof. Someone got my eye there. Woof. Plus the book it's Tobe Hooper, John Landis, Bill Malone, Dario Argento, Takashi Miike, Mick Garris, and no, I got through that whole list and didn't punctuate it properly. Let's try it again.